Awesome. I'm going to share the screen so everyone can see the slides, and then we will get started. There we go. Okay, fantastic. So, as I said, this is the third ever Sales Ops Demystified webinar. And the first one wasn't very good, to be brutally honest, we don't think. But the second one, it was just me and Henry chatting. A few people who are registered here came and saw that, and we really enjoyed it, right?
Yeah, it was very good.
We kind of went over the basics of sales operations. Like, as a few people know, I'm not that experienced in sales operations. Henry is. And then it was after last week's, you said, I know this guy, Justin, who is, I quote, a sales ops ninja. And so here we have Justin. So today we're going to run for between 30 and 45 minutes. And we haven't really structured the conversation too much. We're really going to learn more about Justin, more about Merrill Corp, and more about how they run sales operations, with the goal of giving everybody here an insight into, well, I don't want to say best practices, but an effective sales operations process. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think it can depend heavily on the business and what you're selling, but yeah.
Sure.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. So we'll just check everything's okay with the sound and the picture. Josh, we good?
Yeah, all good.
Great. So if you have any questions, we have Josh here, who's outside of the camera, who is manning the comments and questions. So everything will go through to him. If he sees a good question, well, I'm sure they'll all be good, he'll pass it to me and we can ask Justin. So if you have anything to add, please put it in the comments, either on Facebook if you're watching, or on Webinar Ninja, and that will come through to us. So I think here's like the core discussion points for today. So I guess we'll kick off with Justin giving a brief intro to, I guess, himself and also Merrill.
Sure. Can I just say something?
Yeah, of course.
Because I met Justin through the London Sales Ops meetup, and it's set up by Alex Williams and Kirsty Charlton, and those guys have been running their Sales Ops meetup for like
5 months now.
5 months.
Yeah.
And we actually had a meetup last night. So if you're in London and you're interested in sales ops, you should definitely come along. So we'll post a link up for that. So yeah, massive thank you for those guys organising that.
What time did you get home last night after the last meeting?
Oh, very early, very early. So yeah, over to Justin. Maybe just give yourself a quick intro.
Sure, quick intro. So Justin Kersey, I'm the VP of Sales here in London for Merrill Corporation. So covering the UK and the Nordics. More recently, I was also looking after sales operations for EMEA, so covering the theater from just a sales ops support perspective. Merrill Corporation, our primary focus is due diligence in the M&A community, so we have a SaaS application for due diligence. So we focus heavily on the M&A ecosystem.
Is it, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like the deal room.
Correct. So it's a virtual data room for mergers and acquisitions.
Great. Yeah. So if I'm an investment bank and there's one company being sold to another company, and I'm facilitating the transaction, you have a piece of software that will help people share information.
To allow us to store that documentation pertaining to the asset being sold, so that any interested parties could do their due diligence before potentially preparing bids and
because Google Drive is not good enough.
It's not hyper secure.
So it's hyper secure, and there could be millions of pages of documents that have to be checked by certain different people within the deal.
Yeah, and so we can have really fine-grained user permissioning so that we control who can see what, and then also report on who's looking at what throughout the course of the deal.
Great. And how long have you been at Merrill Corp?
6, coming up on 7 years now. Yeah.
And what was your role when you came in?
When I first came in, I was looking after. I was actually looking after billing, and so I was doing billing for one of our legacy, I guess, parts of the business that we've recently divested. And through that sort of billing lens is where I kind of migrated into a sales operations role. So sales management wanted to know more about the business, about the pipeline, about what we were doing in estimating and what our opportunities looked like. And so I kind of migrated into a more sales operations focused role as a result of that.
So were you the first, did that sales operations group form organically? And you sort of...
A little bit. So we're a US-based business, and so we hired someone to basically start a sales operations function in the United States. And as a result of some of the work that I was doing here, I kind of migrated into that team as a not a direct report, but working alongside the people that were running sales operations globally for Merrill.
So there were established sales ops people within the business?
Not prior to me joining, but they came in
Okay.
whilst I've been here.
Do you think it's a relatively new role that's come on?
I think so. I've come into it in the last 3 or 4 years. Prior to myself coming into it, I didn't really know much about it, and so I'm constantly learning every day. You mentioned the meetup group, which is a great place to learn from other sales ops experts. So for me, it still feels quite new. It still feels like a bit of a buzzword for businesses that are looking to sort of scale and grow their sales organizations. They need, I think, sales ops to help sort of guide part of that journey.
Yeah, they need the expertise, in-house expertise.
Yeah.
That's looking after the training, the technology, everything to do the sales process.
Exactly.
Reporting. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
So it was the time between when you started and when you took on that new sales ops role was how long?
Probably a couple of years.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so then for the last, well, actually, you've now moved out of sales operations almost.
Yeah, towards the tail end of last year, I've moved more into sales management as opposed to sales operations.
Could you share with the audience what you think the difference between those two things is?
That's an interesting question. I'm still learning what the differences are. I think what I bring to sales management coming from sales operations is more of a metrics-based approach to sales. So I don't have necessarily face-to-face sales experience, but what I have is the process. I have the eye for the metrics and how to drive activity in the right places and how to measure that, and are we getting the results that we want to see as a result of that activity. And that's kind of how I approach sales management, more activity and metrics based as opposed to some of the softer skills that are involved in sales.
Okay, cool. Which is still important, right?
I think so, absolutely, yeah.
Which would you say that you're best at, Henry? The softer side or the metrics-driven approach?
Probably the softer side.
Okay.
Probably the face-to-face stuff.
So if I do sit next to Henry in the office at Exeter, and we have a BDR who you do coach, he might be watching actually, Bruno, quite effectively, I think.
Well, he sat right next to me, so it's easy, isn't it?
Cool. And so I understand there's approximately over 40 salespeople in EMEA.
It's around 40 now, yeah.
That you are managing.
So I manage around 10 folks at the moment.
Okay. The UK.
But the wider sales team in EMEA is around 40 people.
Cool. And how's that? So from 4 years ago when they built the operations department, what's the growth of that team look like?
Gosh, it's grown a lot. So I would say 4 years ago we were probably looking at maybe half the size across EMEA. So we've definitely had a lot of growth in the organization, and as a result, grown as a business as well, which is great.
And do you think the business has utilized technology? Because the business has been around for a long time. Do you think they embraced technology, took it on board, and saw the value in? Because you're crunching numbers in CRMs and using the technology to your maximum.
So we definitely started with a much leaner and lighter version of Salesforce than we have today. A lot more additional information is coming into Salesforce as a result of external data sources to help us give a little bit of intelligence around accounts to our reps, so that they know the latest that's been happening with those accounts. We've introduced some tools around just general sales process. So quote to cash is a big one that we've implemented in the last couple of years that helps drive some efficiencies in the sort of sales process, but also feeds back to the organization some information that allows us to analyze how we're quoting and where we're successful, and we can start to figure out how we're pricing things a little bit more effectively.
What do you think makes you an effective sales operations professional?
Again, great question.
And also, it's you're giving your own opinion about yourself. You need someone else to give an opinion about you.
But no one here has worked. It has been one of Justin's salespeople. So maybe we should get him a salesperson.
I think they're all outside.
That's a good answer.
I think understanding that the sales organization is a client for sales operations, so that is your most important customer, I think.
That's a really interesting mindset, actually.
Making sure that you're serving them with the information that allows them to be successful. It's a real fine line between rigid and regimented process that you have to put in place in order to get the information out of the sales organization and still allowing them to be sales professionals and sort of have the freedom to operate the way they like to operate. So that balance between those sort of two competing perspectives is important, and treating them as a customer, I think, is
that's really interesting.
Is big.
Are you like aware of that paradigm?
I think so, but we're a much smaller team.
True.
We have a younger sales process, definitely a younger sales process. So yeah, I can see how that rings true.
And it must be quite like, it must really help. You come into work in the morning and you're like, your clients are not necessarily outside the organization. Your clients are sat there across the room from you.
Yeah.
That's really good. Quote, that's today's quote from the session. Josh, get that down. Okay, so second piece on the is actually looking at Merrill Corp sales process. Now, I'm not sure how much detail you want to go into that.
Yeah, so how do you do your prospecting? What kind of tools are you using?
Okay. So we use a lot of the tools that are widely available. So leveraging LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, leveraging our existing database of Salesforce. So understanding sort of what the lay of the land looks like in terms of the accounts that we have available to us, what the criteria of them look like, sizes of businesses, things like that.
Because who are you actually selling to?
So
not necessarily the people who are paying you the money.
Predominantly, we sell through a channel of the advisory community in the M&A ecosystem. So investment bankers, M&A lawyers, private equity houses, and then some highly transactional corporates. And so that's a very defined list of people that we need to.
You're really just like Manhattan.
Sort of, yeah. So we know who that community is, and it's about understanding, who's in those organizations, understand how they are laid out from an organizational perspective, what teams people sit in, who they report to, who the decision makers are, how to identify potential rising stars within those organizations because they may become a decision maker later on down the line, and making sure that we just have a good map of who people are and what their role is in the organization so that we can follow them through their careers as sort of our salespeople grow through their careers.
Who is like, this question I ask you guys when I'm trying to understand who our customer is. When a sales call is booked with one of your salespeople and they check out the job title of that person, who is the job title that they're most excited about having a call with?
That's a good question. It sort of varies because we have people that can be more senior at these advisory firms that may or may not have a decision-making ability. But it tends to be a lot of the juniors that will sit on our services and our platform doing the work that the deal requires. So they can also be an influence over a decision as a result of, I prefer sitting on this platform when I'm doing my work because it makes me more efficient. Yeah. So they can sort of leverage their seniors to help guide that decision.
Yeah, because maybe the CEO of the investment bank is not that concerned about which software they use for the deal, but an analyst is like,
Exactly.
And how much are you measuring activity? So obviously it's quite relationship based, the sale. So are you want people to go out to dinner, take people out for breakfast, whatever it is. You want face-to-face time. Are you also looking at how many emails they're sending, how many phone calls they're making?
Less about emails and phone calls, but we do use that as a guide. It is more about the face-to-face activity, demonstrations as well. Because it's a software product, we want to make sure that we're showing people our capabilities through the platform. So we really have a high importance on making sure that we demonstrate the software. And then the usual sort of opportunities, win-loss, that sort of thing.
Okay. We do have a question here about territories and forecasting.
Okay.
I'd love to hear, this is from Rajesh, I believe. I would love to hear how you go about forecasting and territory mapping. Gets complicated as it does when you encounter seasonality and stuff.
Okay. So I guess they're somewhat linked. Looking at it from a territory perspective, we leverage a lot of data sources that tell us how active a community might be in M&A. So sources like Merger Market that tell us what the announced deals for a particular country or region look like. And that gives us a guide of how much activity there is in that space that we have to sort of right size our coverage model as a result of that.
And how do you deal with deals that fall into other geographies? If you think it's happening in London but actually it's happening in New York, do you then give away to the US?
Happens a lot, and then we get into some clever split discussions.
Okay.
But yes, particularly in Europe, we have a lot of cross-border deals where an investment banker in London might be hired for a French corporate that's trying to sell itself. So what we try and do is surround the deal by making sure that investment bank is covered. If we get access to knowing who that corporate might be, then we will call on the local rep to make sure that they're also speaking to the corporate to surround that deal as a whole.
Because ultimately, you just have to. You're doing anything to win the business. You know, the details around who benefits from it internally is not the client's problem. It's your problem, right?
That's right.
Do we have another question?
We do. Rajesh is back. How do you map accounts to someone who presume just joined for your sale at midway? How do you allocate accounts?
Is that about distributing?
And then the recommended sales engagement platform from Jamie. So
Okay. That would be interesting.
Justin, do you get this question here?
Would that mean that someone who's joined the team and you have to give them
Joined my sales team. So we leverage definitely LinkedIn, so we can use LinkedIn to understand who sits in what teams in different either law firms or investment bank. Use an investment bank, we can find out what team they sit in and at what level they are, if they're an associate up to MD. And so starting there as a starting point is how we start to sort of, I guess, pull the list of who we know. And then it's about those face-to-face interactions. So as I'm speaking to someone within that account, I'm asking for introductions. I'm asking for, do you have any other members of the team that I should meet with? Are there other teams that you can introduce me to? And leveraging those personal connections that you build to start to map out what that organization looks like from a personnel perspective.
Yeah, there was something that you were talking about, the sales process here with the relationship and opportunities.
Yeah, so that's the last one.
We'll keep that. Anything else, Henry, that you're interested in the sales process?
I mean, what's your typical sales process? How long can it take?
It's very quick. So we're highly transactional as a result of the nature of what we do. So M&A transactions can happen spur of the moment. So if we're speaking about the advisory community, it can be as short as 30 minutes sales cycle. So somebody calls and says, I have a deal, and we can demonstrate, put a quote in front of them, and within an hour, we've spun up a new Datasite. When we're looking at corporates who are going down a path of maybe a longer cycle of divestitures, for instance, then maybe we want to get in there and show them the platform, give them some certainty around a longer term subscription kind of model. So that might be a bit longer sales cycle as we sort of navigate through their procurement process. But certainly through the advisory community, it can be very, very quick.
So what about the most successful salespeople in the organization? What are they doing differently compared to others?
I think it's just diligence and having a set cadence of what you're going to do each day. Those guys that have a plan of this is what I do at this time of the morning and this is what I do each day, and measuring themselves against what they've set out to do throughout the course of a week, a month, a quarter. I think that sort of self-reflective visibility of what I've set out to accomplish and measuring myself against it, I think that's what makes a really, really successful seller.
Because to be successful, you have to consistently do these things every day.
Exactly.
Which is that parallel. That's pretty much the same for like outside of sales as well.
I think so.
If you want to like
being focused and disciplined.
Like Henry's really good at cycling, right? Probably because you cycle consistently.
Yes. The previous life, yes.
Cool. We have a couple of questions. Actually, one question leads very nicely onto how people train the sales team, and it's about the perfect onboarding process. Could you elaborate?
I don't know. I don't know if we've perfected the onboarding process, but what we want to obviously do is make people effective as quickly as possible. And the ways in which we do that is we have some online training tools, which is videos, some reading content, and then some questionnaires and tests essentially that talk about our products, our service, who our customers are, what the buying personas are, so that people can start to relate to who they're going to be speaking to as a customer.
Do you use a piece of technology for the onboard for that particular video and document onboarding? Because there are providers out there.
We do, and I'm struggling for the name at the moment, but it's a plugin for Salesforce that's it's a guided learning process that as a manager we can view where they are through the process, understand how complete they've got it, and whether or not they're answering the questions to a proficient.
How much? Also, you can have tests in there as well.
There's tests in there as well to sort of gauge their proficiency as they go through it.
And how much content is it? Is that like a day's worth, a week's worth? How much?
That is usually a couple weeks worth. The first couple of weeks is sort of a guide for how long we would expect it to get through that.
And they can always go back and revisit at any point.
Absolutely, yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay, I hope that answered. Whose question was that? Who was the onboarding question?
That's Ollie's.
Ollie, have we answered your question there?
And so after that process of some of the online learning, we also we get them to sit with our inside sales team so they can hear how they're doing cold calling and what sort of the script that they're using with clients looks like. They sit with our services team so they can understand some of the day-to-day requests that we get from clients on live transactions. Again, it's really about filling out the context of the people that we're speaking with from a client perspective. And then we put them through a demonstration accreditation. So are they going to be proficient with how they demonstrate the product? Are they going to ask the right questions? Are they going to show the right things? Are they going to use context as they demonstrate the product and use some storytelling so that they create the right kind of impact as they show the software to any prospective users?
Yeah, don't just turn up and throw up.
This is what this button does. It's more about telling the story so that the customer, you're bringing the customer along for that journey of I can see why this would be an effective tool for me to use.
Weren't you saying that in the first webinar we did about the demo?
Yeah,
it's not about just showing everything.
No, you got to show just a couple of things.
Yeah,
and that's what you hope is going to go on the interest. Nice. And that will hopefully give you enough to go on.
Cool. More holistically about training, I think we just spoke about the onboarding process. But then once someone is in, what if any are there other training that you do for people ongoing after onboarding?
So we have leveraged some external providers to come in and give us some sales training generally. Some of it is sales psychology as well, which is really useful. So how do you understand what type of person you're sitting across, and how do I adjust my tact to make sure that I'm delivering a message in a way that you're going to want to receive it? So if I'm speaking to a hyper analytical person, I probably want to use some data and some facts to bring them along for the ride. Whereas people on the opposite, maybe I just want to use some high level information and not get too down into the weeds when it comes to data. So just being able to identify that person that sat across from you and adjust your messaging accordingly is really important.
Because you're certainly dealing with the financial services world where people, they're type A people, they know what they want. So it's almost like give them what they want.
Yeah.
So it's personality.
Another question from Oliver: average ramp time for a new SDR?
We look at about 4 to 6 weeks for an onboarding process. We'd like to get people in front of clients within their first sort of month and a half and start getting them producing. At a junior level, we kind of have them along for the ride with some of our more senior sales reps and supporting our more senior sales reps so that they get exposure to what good looks like.
Yeah.
They have an opportunity to sort of take some of those tools that they're learning just by being there and listening and observing and adapt into their own style and come up with their own sort of script as they go.
And the accreditation process you have, which is almost like a tick saying you can now present our products to
we feel confident that you can go on your own and show our product to people.
That process is quite interesting. It's quite a full-on process for the person going through, would you say?
I would say so, yeah.
From what you've told me before, it can be quite a full-on process, but it sounds like it's a process that it obviously works because it kind of filters out the people who aren't really meant to be there, maybe,
right,
or haven't had enough training, whatever it is. Maybe you want to talk about how you do that.
So with the demo process, it's really put together a demonstration and give it to the rest of your peers, and your peers will give you feedback after that process. So it's a simulation of a potential real deal scenario, and they need to present based on that scenario. And because they're doing it in front of their peers who have been through this process and know how stressful it is to present, this is going to be the hardest audience that you're ever going to have to please, because after that fact, it's just talking to customers that haven't actually been through this process of accreditation. So we think if you could get through your colleagues that have been there, done that, then that's going to be easily the toughest audience you're going to see.
We have a question from our CEO, actually.
Okay.
He asked about churn rate for the sales team.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you don't want to share the number, but if you could give us a range.
I actually don't know the churn rate. It's not super high. We're quite a lucky organization that we've got a lot of stickiness in our sales organization.
So
it's great.
Annually, just 1 or 2 people, or less than that?
I'd say it's around there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Nice. I guess just great management, eh?
Something like that. Something like that.
Great processes.
Do we have any other questions on training?
There was a question on any sales engagement tools. So you've obviously got Salesforce as your CRM. What other tools are you using for the sales team? Do they have a CTI in Salesforce? Do they have any basically anything else plugged into Salesforce that's helping them with their process? Maybe some, because I know you're not using necessarily high velocity sales tools, but are you using any?
So we have a tool called LeadSpace, which is plugged into Salesforce, which just gives us a little bit more information about either the contact or the account that we're looking at. Exactly. Yeah. So fleshes out some of the information that we have around those records.
Okay.
So no, I know that we have platforms like Outreach and Salesloft that empower salespeople to do more. We're not using those.
So our inside sales team, our BDR team, are using, I believe it's Salesloft, but that's kind of separate from my team. So we use that as a lead generation tool for sure. Yeah.
Got it. Cool. Any more questions? We good? Sweet. Anything else on training, Henry?
I think we covered it all. Yeah, I think we covered it all. Cool. Yeah, it was interesting. Before the part of the training process, you have a session of clicking buttons and saying what they do, across the entire product. And I quite like that as just a quick onboarding to check people's knowledge.
Yeah,
it's just like a knowledge checker.
Yeah. So prior to their demonstration, it is literally, can you show me how to do this in the platform? Right. It's not a sales sort of polished presentation. It's, can you add a user? Can you send an invite? Things like that. Just to get a general idea, do they understand the full functionality of the platform?
Yeah.
And then from there, take that understanding of the functionality. Now, how do I become a storyteller to make this relevant and contextualize it for the audience that I'm presenting it to? Yeah.
Do you have more questions?
Yeah. So I'm not sure about this one. Is there one particular mythical / unicorn metric or data point that you would love to achieve from Oliver?
That's a great question, actually. I don't know. I'd have to think about that one.
Okay, Oliver will think about it, and then if we get an answer, we'll email it to you.
To achieve. Okay. That's one to think about for sure.
Okay, we're not good at that question. Cool. So I think the final agenda point is about something that Henry was very.
Yeah, I call it opportunity roles. So and it's part of your sales process. I thought it was just. I thought it's fascinating because I've not heard anyone else who does this, and it's because it's so relationship based what you do. So maybe you want to talk through. Yeah. So did you have a different name for it other than opportunity roles?
We can go with that. It's really just about grading relationship levels with contacts. So we look at, and again, this goes back to the mapping of accounts, understanding who is there in the universe of that account, and then having a real honest look at what myself as a seller has as a relationship with those individuals. So We grade them from A to D. An A relationship is someone who's an advocate for us, who's going to push for us to win business with them every time. Whereas a D is someone who's a detractor. They have a preference for somebody else. They don't want to work with us. And so by mapping out those accounts and understanding all of the individuals within an account and whether or not they're an A to a D, and obviously you have the middle ground of B and C, how do I identify who those Ds are, move them to a C, move them to a B? If I get into a sticky sales process where I need a little bit of help, well, then I know who my A's are and I can leverage those relationships to help maybe potentially push a deal over the line.
Who judges what letter they get? The salesperson?
So the salesperson themselves have to really
to be honest,
own that and be honest to themselves, because when they get into a scenario where they need a little bit of help to push something over the line, they can't have a list of A's that are really C's and not get any help from them. So it's really just about being honest with yourself and your relationships with your clients.
I think it's something all sales processes use and could learn from, is that you always need a champion somewhere.
Yeah.
And it just happens that you grade your champions and use them as part of the process.
And it's about identifying if an A leaves an account and goes somewhere else, well then do you have someone to backfill that role and be your champion going forward?
Sure.
And how do you move people that are B's and C's and bring them up to becoming an A-level relationship?
Why would someone be an active detractor?
Stronger relationships with a competitor, preference for a competitor's platform. Sometimes it's just down to price, things like that. And so it's about understanding why they are a D and trying to bring them up to a higher grade.
So if I was a salesperson and I had like 3 Ds on an account, would I like reach out to all of them and be like, should we go for dinner and cocktails?
Yeah, I don't think entertaining would be a bad idea necessarily, to get them out and understand why they have a preference for going elsewhere. Get an opportunity to potentially show them the product as well and show them what the benefits of moving across would look like. So yeah, I think that face-to-face interaction, and it is very much a relationship sell. So making sure you build that relationship with them is going to help sort of guide them from a D to hopefully a C or B or A.
Depends how good the cocktails are.
That's it. Yeah.
Here's a really good question. If an SDR or salesperson leaves, how do you transition relationships, say from the A to Ds to somebody else? Is there a process?
Yeah. So obviously we try and mitigate that risk by having multiple people covering accounts, so that there's a continuity of coverage if somebody does leave. Usually we have a notice period as well where we'll ask that they'll start to make introductions, transition any outstanding opportunities, things like that, to help guide whoever's going to be taking on that account into the knowledge that they're sitting on as well.
Sure. Great. Okay, Josh, how are we doing for time? Just 35 minutes. I do have one more question, and you might have some more. Is there anyone else in the sales ops space that you really that you think crushes and you like learn to or look up to? Apart from
Alex Williams.
I think just Alex Williams. Yeah.
And maybe we should get Alex Williams on the show.
I think he's next. Yeah.
Great.
You
have some more.
I've got a question. So, what traits do you look for in a salesperson? If you're going to hire someone, what are you looking for?
A colleague of mine actually gave me a tip where he said if I can spend the next 5 hours in a car journey with this rep, then I think they'll be a good rep. So we can teach them anything that they need to know about our customers, our product, the community into which we sell, but they have to be personable. They have to be likable. You have to want to engage with them because ours is very much a relationship-driven sale. So if I can't build a relationship with this person, I probably won't want to buy from them either. So can I go on a road trip with this person and spend 5 hours in a car and not want to jump out?
Do you care very much if you receive someone's CV that they don't have financial services experience, or is that desirable? What are you looking for?
I think it helps, particularly when it allows them to have some context around why what we do is important to the ecosystem that we serve. But it's not essential. It's something that can be taught. Everything about what we do, I think, from the platform to our customers, how we engage with customers, we can teach that. But personality is not something necessarily that can be taught.
Makes sense.
I have some, sorry to
No, that's good.
jump in. Rajesh is very enthusiastic about forecasting. He would love to know more about how you forecast. Excel has exponential smoothing function, but that still has a leeway of 10% delta, which actuals with our sales. What is the best tool or way of building forecasting on Excel?
That's a great question. I mean, because of the short sell cycle that we have, our forecasting is incredibly short term. So we know what opportunities we have open in the pipe will likely close one way or another very quickly. So as opposed to sort of looking at what's in our pipeline to predict what our forecast is looking like, we use historical averages around what the M&A space is telling us is going to happen in the month of February. Over the last 5 years, on average, February has this number of deals in the market, and that gives us an idea of, based on our market share or our anticipated market share, what we're going to get out of that
And
space.
you've got decades worth of your own data that you can also
Exactly.
analyze.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
And then, we sort of say, we know that this is the growth rate year over year. Here's what we did last year. So this is sort of our anticipated project count.
And weren't you saying that the number of deals is kind of flatlined, but revenue or growth from L-Corp has increased, which means that you're gaining market share?
That's the idea, absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic. It must be down to the
And
great.
very quickly around Brexit, is it having an impact in the marketplace?
It's certainly slowing the M&A community a little bit, but we're still seeing people being active, doing deals, which is great for us. But I think the uncertainty has led to a little bit of a stall in kicking off new deals. Transactions are there waiting in the wings for a determination of which way Brexit's going to go. There's just a reluctance, I think, to kick off some of those processes until there's a little more clarity on what's going to happen.
Good. Right. Cool. Anything else you'd like to add? Always.
I think that's
No more questions, Henry? Final word?
No more questions from me, but just thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and thanks to Justin for.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been great to have you on.
Thank you.
Are we talking about anyone we've got on next week?
Oh, yeah, so we do have, I don't know, should we announce it?
It's up to you.
So we have Rory from Cluster, who is joining us 5 p.m. next Thursday. We'll either be going to his office or we might do it on a call. And so we'll be distributing a page for anybody who's interested in attending that from next week. And then moving forward, we'll probably have every week somebody come on and do a similar chat. It's this style of content people enjoy. So there's Alex, who we're potentially going to get on.
Yeah, we should probably get Alex and Kirsty on.
Did you ask Alex's question?
No, I don't know if I should.
God, come on, you can't say that. No, these people want the question.
Well, Alex's question to you in particular is how can you be a sales manager with no sales experience?
That's a great question, Alex. I think it comes back to, again, my sales operations experience of being very process focused, analytical, looking at the metrics for success rather than, I can coach around some of the soft skills of sales because I've been around a sales organization for the majority of my career, just not actively selling. So I think I have an idea of what good looks like, but definitely leveraging the more analytical side of things to understand what the metrics of success look like and measuring against those things, I think has really helped me as a sales manager.
You'll have to think of
Thanks,
questions.
Alex.
You'll have to think of some questions for Alex. But
I'll be sure.
Okay, so that concludes the third Sales Ops Demystified. Justin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and we'll see. Oh yeah, I forgot the main slide. If anybody has any questions, if you're in the M&A community or M&A space, and you're about to do a deal and you don't want to use Google Drive,
Which you don't.
You should email Justin. And we haven't really spoken about Esther, but if you want to know anything about Esther, you can email me on those two email addresses. So yeah, thank you everybody so much, and we will see you at the same time next week.